and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Movie Maker magazine. My name is Danny DeLillo. We're here at the South Park Center, and I'm here with George with his fantastic movie, Limité. Let's take another clip.
¿Quieres ir al gabacho? Se puede ver todo San Diego desde acá. Está por allá.
¿Has ido?
Todavía no. Resulta que sí necesito tu ayuda.
Te juro que no fui de mí. Te juro que no sabía nada.
Quiero que me expliques por qué diablos quieres echar tu vida a la basura.
¡Abu!
George, welcome to the New Filmmakers Los Angeles family, and how are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks so much, Danny. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, thank you. We couldn't have had this festival without such great films, and so impactful. For those that haven't seen your film, tell us a brief synopsis.
The film Limité is inspired by real events at the border, and it tells the story of Manuel, a 16-year-old kid who gets caught up in a dangerous situation at the border. And it's completely fictional except for the ending. I was inspired by this event that I read in the newspaper, and it just stayed in my mind, and I wondered what led up to that, or what is the set of circumstances that pushes a 16-year-old kid to the border with a bag of drugs.
George, I'm so glad you made this film. I mean, its impact on my heart and anyone that would ever see it is breathtaking. It's so devastating what happened. I'm so glad that you brought light to this story and this young boy and what he had to go through. Not to mention the film itself was just an incredible cinematic experience as well. Obviously based from these true events and just knowing what this kid had gone through, when was that moment for you where you wanted to turn this story into a film?
You know, it takes a while, I think, with stories. After I couldn't get it out of my mind for a few months, I knew that I had to do something with it. And I just kept thinking about it, and a story started to grow around it. So it was really an organic process. I think with films, there's so many stories out there, and you're tempted, to go in a certain direction, but really in deciding to make a movie and knowing that it's going to be a 2, 3, 4-year endeavor, for me it was 5 with this movie, knowing that you're going to spend all this time, it has to be something that you truly believe in, and it comes out of necessity almost. You need to get it out of your system. So this was the case with this film for me. It was just something that wasn't leaving me, and the script actually kept growing. It started off at 13 pages, then 17, and by the time we shot it was 30, because I knew if I kept waiting, it would be too long for me to make it. I wouldn't have the funds to do it. So I knew when we hit 30 pages, I said, okay, we need to shoot this because I don't have any more money. Yeah, that was really yeah.
Well, one of the things I know we spoke about off camera is that obviously it's a film that's a bit more usual than the longer length of a short film, but I didn't take my eyes off it for a blink of an eye. I was captivated by this film, and if anything, it was hard to let it go. Your cast were sensational, and particularly your lead, who just led the way so incredibly for a young actor. How did you go about bringing your cast together?
Thank you for saying that. I'm really happy with our cast and our lead. His name is Gustavo Cruz. He's from Monterrey, and all the other actors are from Tijuana, except for the 2 American characters in the film. So we were lucky to work with a casting director down in Tijuana, and he found the whole cast for us. And Amazingly, he had worked with Gustavo on a previous project. It was going to come together, but it never ended up happening. But Gustavo auditioned, and it was one of the first 5 or so self-tapes that we got.
Wow.
And you know, I was just floored when I saw him. I knew we had our lead.
I mean, there were so many young, talented stars in there. It was unbelievable to see. I mean, it was just amazing. But especially to tell a story as deep and impactful in this way, and so many stakes as well. There was, you know, again, high stakes in this film, and certainly as actors, I'm sure it was amazing to partake in a film like this as well, because everyone got such a juicy role to kind of really, you know, celebrate their talent. What was your process in this film of working with your actors?
So luckily for me, all the actors spoke English because my Spanish is very basic. I wrote
You teach Bulgarian
now? Right, yeah. I wrote the script in English, and I had a friend translate it. And he's Mexican, but he's lived in Europe for the last 10 years. So when the actors got the script, they would say, I wouldn't say that this way, I would say it this way. So I'm like, great, you know, make it your own. I want this to be as organic as possible. And I gave them the freedom and actually encouraged them to collaborate and to just bring their own sensibilities to the story. And the biggest compliment to me is when a Mexican audience watches it. We showed it at the Mexican consulate here in LA. And the staff came up to me afterwards and they said, "We can't believe you're not Mexican." That was the biggest compliment to me. And it's really a testament to the actors and everyone else on the crew that, you know, that put their heart and soul into this.
With a story like this as well, especially, you know, based on true events, and just, goodness me, the journey that these, you know, people are going through. And a lot of it feels very real as well. It feels like this is just taken from many, many different experiences in maybe different story settings, but a lot of young people and people fall into this in different circumstances. Was that kind of something that was also playing on your mind as well? This is kind of an example of what is actually happening right now, too.
Yeah, I mean, I was able to relate to the kid because I come from Bulgaria. It's not a rich country, and especially in the 90s when I grew up, it was rife with violence.
Yeah.
And I had a similar experience growing up. I was surrounded by maybe not the best people with the best intentions, and looking back, I can recognize how that could have gone terribly wrong. Yeah. And in this case, it went wrong for him. But you know, any 16-year-old can fall into a trap. Mm-hmm. The question is, are we going to make them pay with their lives for making a stupid mistake that anyone makes? And you know, just realizing my privilege as a legal immigrant in this country, and so many people who are at the border risking their lives and their families' lives just for the chance of a better life. And this wasn't exactly that kind of story, but still, it's you know, it's a 16-year-old kid at the border who was treated cruelly by our border agents.
And you know, to add to that as well, which is such a thing in this country, the borders here, but also in a lot of other countries too, and just how disgusting and degrading and dehumanizing people are treated at the border. I mean, it's disgusting, you know, it really is. These are people just trying to transfer from one piece of land to another, and the way people treat them is gross and grotesque, and obviously led to this, you know, tragic story as well. I was also in admiration because there was a lot of scenes and exteriors and interiors, and you know, big for an independent short film as well. How was the production? What were your challenges? Like, there were so many good scenes, you know, in different locations and places. How was that experience for you?
So Tijuana is really a character in the film.
Yeah, it really is, yeah.
I was aiming to put as much of Tijuana as possible in there because the city is so colorful, it's so vivid, it's full of life. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I realized that the first time we went to TJ was in 2013. And the moment we crossed the border, we just exhaled. And you know, you feel like, it felt like Bulgaria to me. Just, you know, the way the city is laid out, there's a European sensibility to it. You know, the cobblestone Main Street and so on. Yeah, and all these, and the roundabouts that you don't really get here. Yeah. So we ended up going down to Tijuana often and visiting various places. And as I was writing the script, I envisioned certain locations, and it was very clear in my mind what was going to be in the screen as I was writing it. So really, Tijuana was such an important part of the film. In terms of the challenges, I guess one of the challenges was bringing the equipment down to shoot. We had our first camera assistant, Marcin. He owned the camera, and we shot on film. So he drove down with the equipment. We had a bunch of rented equipment as well, and I had my line producer. He was working on the permits, and he said, yeah, everything's in order. As soon as Marcin crossed the border, the Mexican customs agents pulled him over, said, unload everything. All the equipment is on the ground, and they said, where's your paperwork? And he showed them a piece of paper, and they said, well, this is not enough. And he said, well, that's all they gave me, that's all I know. And they said, well, we're gonna confiscate your equipment.
So no film.
No film.
Oh,
and
goodness.
we were supposed to start shooting the next day. So, and I was rehearsing with the actors, the final scene that you saw at the border. I was rehearsing that scene when we got the call from Marcin that he's been detained at the border.
Ironic, given the film that you're talking about as well. Like, what's going on?
Exactly. Yeah. So my wife, who's the producer, Eliza, she hopped in the car, drove down there, and our associate producer, Carlos, they were swimming upstream through the Mexican agents who are only allowed to let people down, and they were going one by one, and finally made their way to the detention center where our camera assistant was being held, and there was a negotiation that took place, and a fine that was paid, and finally we were able to get the equipment out and make the film. So as soon as that happened, I knew we were making a movie.
Yeah. Finally, right? Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
it's happening. It's our first big hurdle, and there's no going back.
But where did you actually shoot that scene in the immigration border? Because that was like obviously a very powerful scene. But like, does that actually at a place? Was that at a border?
Well, people ask me that, and it's such a compliment to be asked, how did they let you shoot at the border? It's like, well, no. So our production designer is amazing. Her name is Sirum Ramirez. She and her team built that set, and it was the only place in Tijuana that worked for that. And I knew without having that location, I wasn't going to make the movie. One was our lead actor, the second was the location for the border. Those were the two critical components that I just wasn't going to shoot without. And it was the one place, it's the cultural center in Tijuana. That just looks like an American government, institution, right?
Yeah, no, I was like, they couldn't agree to this, surely.
Right,
Like,
no
I was
way.
like, wow. And even just like, obviously, how did you go and approach like, the bar, like filming in the bar and stuff? Like, how do you kind of find those locations?
Oh, so we had a location manager, and she showed us different places. For example, the bar we found through location scouting, but the restaurant with the birthday scene and the cake, if you remember that, that's a restaurant that I would often go to. And I knew I wanted to shoot there just because it's so colorful. And I remember being there once, and there was a birthday taking place, and the waiters came over, and they imitated fireworks with, whistling. They were whistling fireworks and clapping the menus together for the explosions. Wow. So I knew I need this in the movie, and that's what we ended up having. And the day when we were shooting, I asked the waiters, "Does anyone know how to do this?" And no one did. They found a cook down in the kitchen who knew how to do it. So the cook came up, and he's the one whistling and clapping the menu.
Oh, he's the one. Oh, I remember him. Yeah, he was good. He did a good job. Good job. There you go. See?
These elements, things I've experienced in Tijuana, in Bulgaria, my relationship with my grandfather was just, I put all that together, and hopefully it worked.
Yeah, I mean, this relationship between, grandson and grandfather was really, really beautiful to see it unfold, but obviously a lot. Now, I don't think I'm ever this film is never, it felt so real, and it was real, based on real events, but it will kind of never leave me. And I think once you discover that the truth to it, it's so haunting, this experience. I'm just curious, after discovering this story and then making this film, what did you want your audience to take from your film?
Really what you said about our treatment of people at the border and our complicity as Americans, whether we allow that to continue or whether we pay attention to it and say, no, that's not okay. Yeah. And this is, I think, the message of the film, that we're all human and we deserve to be treated as humans.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, may we never, shy away from what is happening in and around us. It's our responsibility. But I commend you for making this film, for his legacy, for his family, and just to remind people of what goes on, and we need to keep pushing for that change. So appreciate you for doing it, honestly, George. What is next for you?
So the set, we were lucky to be working with an amazing production designer. Her name is Ciro Ramirez, and she and her team built the set from scratch.
Well, they did a really, really good job, because I really thought that was the border, and I was worried for you. So good job to the team.
Next is hopefully turning this into a feature. And the way we're thinking of doing that is by focusing on the grandfather as the protagonist.
Yeah. And honestly, New Filmmakers, you have all of our support for that as well. But this feature needs to be made for so many different reasons. So thank you for bringing your film to us. Thank you for all your cast and crew and everybody involved. And yeah, thank you for Limite.
Thank you so much, Danny, and thank you to New Filmmakers LA and for having the space to show our film.